Afternoon, coaches. Welcome to the DSS Locker Room Podcast. Daniel and Ryan are back this week again with a review of the weekend's action. A phenomenal weekend of football, lads. I love Kieran McGeeney's interview on Saturday after the game. He really had a real go at the begrudgers of modern day football. He talked about it was very funny. He says that his squad have watched the Kerry Armagh game from 21 years ago, and he says they actually laughed at it. They laughed at us. Now he says that the standard that the game was, he says, and the mistakes that were made, and he says, and it does go to show, lads, like the game has, when the top teams play each other, like the game's good to watch. It's really good to watch, and there's been some brilliant games this year. There has been some brilliant games. There's been some dire games. There's no question about it at all. But the weekend's action, lads, was absolutely phenomenal. I know, Ryan, you were there. Daniel, you were there as well. I was down myself at both games. Like, Ryan, from an atmosphere point of view, you were even commenting on before the match outside of the ground. It was buzzing, wasn't it?
Yesterday, Stephen, obviously it was just the two teams in Donegal and Galway, and like 2:15 there was a queue to get into the Crow Park Hotel. So it just goes to show you the amount of people that had travelled down to get down early, soak in the atmosphere, and that transferred across to the game. Like it was great match. And then the Saturday evening, like once the Armagh fans got going, once the likes of Ryan O'Neill and Soupy Campbell started kicking those wonder points, it was rocking, and it was great to see. Kerry didn't travel in big numbers, and I think that difference that the Armagh crowd brought to the table probably energised the players. And geez, I'll tell you what, when it went to extra time, you just felt that the Armagh crowd was going to push their team over the line. It wasn't going to be another hard luck story for them.
Yeah, and lads, like when you have that atmosphere, like it is phenomenal. Like just you being in the ground, you get sense the comeback coming. Particularly when the goal went in, you just felt there was only going to be one winner. The momentum was in Armagh, and when the chants are coming, Armagh coming from the stand, and it's relentless. Like as a player, lads, that would just give you an extra 3 or 4%. Like it really.
Definitely, yeah, I think so. And like I was actually at a wedding on the Saturday, and we were watching. A few of us were watching at the table, as you do, on mute, and it was just really from about the 44th minute. It looked like there was no other team going to win it, and I know Kerry had their chances and all the rest of it, but it just looked like it was all feeding into the kind of the Armagh story, the bigger story. And look, they definitely rode their luck at times, but you know what? I'm sort of delighted. Firstly, for the whole championship, I think a strong Armagh, a strong Galway in the final with the support they brought over the weekend, I think it's going to be brilliant. It gets out of the Dublin Kerry kind of the quagmire that it has been. And that ultimately both those sets of fans have had a fair bit of success, and I think the hunger and the aspiration of both sets of fans for Galway and for Armagh, I think it's going to be something else for the next couple of weeks. So purely from an entertainment point of view, I'm absolutely delighted to see the final that we have, and it was really funny actually watching it on mute, and obviously I watched it back a couple of days afterwards, and to see it in real time, I was thinking first half, geez, Armagh won't be too displeased at that. They're actually they're in touching distance. They're riding their luck a bit, but they're in touching distance, and it just felt like the Kerry goal almost spurred them into action. And to be honest, they'd have had every excuse to throw in the towel when they went. I think it was a 5 down at one stage.
Five down, yeah.
They'd have had every excuse to say, look, we've had a good year, we've broken that barrier, finally getting to a semi-final. But they didn't, and I don't think you can underestimate the power of the Armagh bench. I felt was probably the critical turning point in the whole thing.
Yeah, and Ryan, I we'll mention the Tailteann final at the end, but I watched the Tailteann final and both teams just giving up the kickouts, the whole game more or less, and it sets a tone for a sort of a slow pedantic play, and a boring spectacle. But when Armagh had a chase and they had a press, and really and truly now, you can't win the All Ireland unless you press kickouts at some stage in the game. You can't just drop off every kickout and expect to win the game. There's got to be moments in the game where you go after. And actually, the Armagh goal, Ryan, came from Armagh pressing a kick out and the turn Shane Ryan over. And it was obviously his mistake that led to McCambridge, palming the goal in. But it was the Armagh turnover that created that goal opportunity initially. And it just sort of makes you think, when you have momentum and you have that energy, go after it. And I love when Galway went a point up. I really loved that. They went a point up late in the game and they went after the next kick out. And I thought it was admirable. Now Patton still managed to get it away. But it was really good to see that bravery and that, real trust in we're going to go after this and we're going to give this a real good stab. And I think what it does is, Ryan, as well, when you're pressing kickouts, it gives you energy, doesn't it? It gives the team energy, doesn't it? It gives the supporters energy.
Yeah.
It makes it a contest. It makes it a contest.
Exactly. And I feel Stephen Armagh play their best football whenever it's chaotic, and it's very much at times off the cuff, and they get the crowd behind them, they kick these big scores. and they put the squeeze on you, and they definitely were very brave when the Kerry kick out. There was the times where Kerry had extra bodies in behind, and they just backed Creeley and Big Grimley to get a fist in the ball and drive it back from where it came from. And then the thing about it is Soupy Campbell and these boys then, they were coming flying in under break ball, and all of a sudden Armagh were coming in throws. But the thing was, Barry McCambridge is another example of playing really brave. Like, he wasn't looking behind him to see if Clifford was tracking him or not. When Armagh had the ball in that second half, he was going. And it was obviously a tactic. They just said, we're going to go for the juggler here. Don't be worrying about Clifford maybe staying up top and not tracking you. We're going to go for it. And obviously, he got himself into that position for the goal as well. They always say, when you're a coach, you say, if you make a mistake, try not to back it up with another mistake. And it was interesting that Shane Ryan, who's normally excellent at getting the short kick out of the way, as you said there, he messed up. I think Soupy Campbell maybe nipped in and won the kick out on him when he was trying to get it away short on the top of the D. And then as the play developed, obviously a goalkeeper's thinking about that mistake. High ball in the air, bit of pressure put on by Ben Creeley. All of a sudden he fumbles it. So he backed up. It was 2 mistakes in a row. And then all of a sudden at that point, Armagh were back in the game, because it did look, Stephen, to be honest, midway through the second half that Kerry were in control here. They'd maybe opened it out to 5. Tom O'Sullivan had one chance, I'm thinking, of a goal chance, maybe on his right foot where he put it wide. And at that point, definitely Armagh were on the ropes. But in fairness to them, they just kept coming. And it was a great sign of a team. I think the last time we talked about them losing a narrow game was the Ulster final on penalties. And, we were all saying that they're bound to be devastated. And I actually said the only thing that can make up for that is if they go and win the All-Ireland. Yeah. And you have to give them massive credit. The management team were super brave. Aidan Nugent has obviously been, a really good impact sub for them. But McGeeney, it wasn't working out for him. McGeeney was brave enough to get Turbot back on the pitch. And I think someone told me Armagh had all their subs used with 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So that again is an unbelievable sign of bravery that the management team were saying, we're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And fair play to them. They got the reward in the finish.
Yeah, and I suppose, lads, like the first real test Armagh had, obviously it was that Ulster final against Donegal, and it went to extra time, it went to penalties, and then obviously they came into the championship, and they had that terrific result, against Galway, where they went to Margaret Park and got the draw, which obviously ultimately they topped the group. They beat Derry as well, Edge in Celtic Park. They beat a stubborn Westmeath team as well without Rian O'Neill that day. And they actually probably were, when you actually think about it, and bar the penalty shootout, like Armagh's unbeaten in championship football this year, Galway's unbeaten in championship football this year, and it sort of makes you think, like, as well too, the two best teams are probably in the final that have, on paper and on record, that have performed this year. And I just felt, Edge, that those real tight games that Armagh were involved in, I thought it'd give them an edge, definitely getting into that extra time period. Like Kerry went through the championship at a canter, there was the Hardy raised a sweat. And it was even the game against Derry, they never really had to come out of second gear. Derry sort of looked at a beaten docket at that stage. And I do feel, Edge, that the actual, the game conditioning that Armagh have had throughout those real titanic tussles, like, and it's amazing, like, because someone actually said, I can't, like, come out with a statistic here now, like, but like in nearly 2 years or something, or 3 years or something, McGeeney actually hasn't lost a championship game in normal time, like, so it's some record, like, they are like, and to be fair, I'm delighted to see them getting over the line, like, delighted, like.
Yeah, it's the old kind of revisionism adage, if Kerry won and Armagh ran out of juice in the last 10 minutes, it'd be because Kerry, had a nicer run in, they were fresh, and Armagh win and it's because they're calloused and they're hardened to these close games. But I think there is something in being calloused and being hardened. Like, look at Galway in the same boat as well. But you can't, I think you can't underestimate the value of good coaching in both of these teams as well. Like, I mean, I know we'll talk a little bit more about Donegal and Galway later on, but I think the efficiency of the way Armagh played at the weekend was really impressive. Like, because there's no doubt they were on the ropes. Like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Kerry probably halfway through the second half, that game should have been put to bed. And look, under fatigue and some of Kerry's skills under pressure, I think, let them down a small bit. And look, we'd always associate Kerry teams with silky football, silky moves. But ultimately, I think they actually made some really poor decisions, some really poor errors on the ball. And like, I think Tom Sullivan's 2 goal chances, I mean, like, I know the first one maybe you wouldn't call it clear cut, but it was still a really good opportunity for goal that a slick Kerry team finishes. The second one was like weaker foot, yes, fair enough, but again, you expect a Kerry footballer, no matter who he is, whether it's cornerback or not, be able to finish that. So I think there's a huge amount of there's a huge amount in the fact that Kerry, I think, are undercooked. There's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't use that to take anything away from Armagh, because Armagh have had every excuse under the sun not to be in an All-Ireland final, and I don't think they've let anything be an issue. But I think a huge part of that is the way they use their panel, and the way they kind of, as Ryan alluded to earlier on, not afraid to make changes at certain times. But like, you look at the impact of Ross McQuillan, for example. Like, I mean, that was amazing. Like, I mean, he was a huge game changer in that, in extra time, especially. Bringing Conor Turbo back in, even, that's a big call, as taking Nugent out. Campbell coming in religiously at halftime and making impacts. I mean, I think the way Armagh have utilised their panel has been really, really a big part of why they are where they are today. And I would also say like that's been a process. I mean, McGeeney has taken time to build this group, and you know what? I think they're full value for it. I will say they did ride their luck, but you know what? Who cares? I think they've deserved a little bit of luck over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and just looking here, like, the Jarlath Hogue came in at extra time as well, Ryan. Like, Daniel talks about the bench. Connolly came on for Grugan again. You had a Turbo came in, for Nugent very late in the game as well, actually. And, late in extra time. And you're sort of looking at it, like, and you're saying to yourself, like, there's obviously a serious trust in that bench, like, and a deep bench as well. And like it's testament to the job that Kieran has done to keep that whole group happy and together and united. And I suppose, like anything, it's very easy when you're winning and things are going well, but you can really have a sense, like, even listening to Rian O'Neill's interview after, and we're probably repeating the same narrative we've repeated before here, Ryan. But the point I'm coming to is as well, like, the importance of a manager who the players believe in, like, and they have a manager there who they just absolutely adore, like, and it's actually refreshing to see, like, it really is, like,
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. Like, we have talked how much Armagh changed their team, and the boys that come in are able to do a job. Like, we've mentioned Barry McCambridge now a couple of times, where all of a sudden he's been thrown into the action, and at this stage Barry McCambridge is probably in line for an All-Star. So much so that they even trust him, Mark and David Clifford. So McGeeney obviously has an unbelievable knack, and it's great management skills to have everyone on board and explain that just because you're playing one day doesn't mean that you're not going to get a shout the next day. And look, Aidan Nugent I've no doubt he could be used as an impact, because he's normally a very effective player to come on. The guys that he did bring on, though, Geordie O'Byrne's, he's an attacking threat. It's the way he plays. Ross McQuillan plays nearly like off the cuff. He's an attacking threat. Nugent came on, didn't work out for him, but again, attacking threat. Soupy Campbell. These boys are all off the cuff attacking threats. So it seems to be that he backs his Joe McElroys and these guys to get them to a certain point, and then the rest of them are told to come on and finish the job out. So massive credit to him. The other thing I noticed, there's guys like Mark Shields that's been around the Armagh for a number of years, and when I was down at the game, Mark Shields hasn't been on a 26, I don't think, this year, but somehow McGeeney is able to keep these more experienced guys around the place. They obviously help for in-house games, etc. So that just goes to show you the trust that they have in McGeeney, and vice versa, that he's saying, look, you're probably not going to be in my 26 all year, but you've still got a massive part to play in us getting to where we want to go to. And fair play to him. Like, he's building, and I suppose the county board has backed him, the players have backed him, and now he's got his just reward.
And Ledge, the importance of having a good management team around you, a good coaching team around you. McGeeney made reference to that in his interview. He was very, very vocal about the quality that he has there, and the mixture that he has as well. You've obviously got McKeever, who, obviously would be in probably more as a defensive oriented coach, working on the tactic or the tackling side of things and how the defensive setup. You've obviously got Gilligan, who would be looking at the transitional based stuff, and then you've obviously Donegal, who's going to be a gem from a forward movement point of view, and like with his background as well, basketball, setting up plays. It was a real interesting play actually, Ledge, where balls in the air or whatever, and they were calling some sort of play or whatever, and you could actually see from behind the goals, the whole Armagh squad just literally moving into a quarter of the field, religiously just got into it. They were isolating a man on the far side, whether it was Nugent or Turbo or someone like that. I don't know who it was, but you could actually see a set play. They'd obviously predicted that Kerry would go man to man, and like these wee things, like they're very, very hard. Like, it's not easy to coach these things, and it just shows you the quality, and obviously as well the time spent in the training ground, and the valuable time that they spend in the training ground is very evident to see. They're a well coached team, team.
Yeah. I think you've touched on a really good point there. Like, I think for the first 40-ish minutes, I think the game was probably far looser than Armagh would have liked. It was far more transitional than they would have liked. And what really impresses me when the game got tight, when the things started to come down the stretch, when it's the easy time for players to kind of forget about game plan, forget about system, and to start getting loose, I thought Armagh actually tightened things up. And you could, Eamon Fitzmaurice mentioned on commentary a few times, the camera didn't quite pick it up, but you could see they asked the Kerry defenders a couple of different questions. So there was one play, they all bunched in the middle, kind of what Dublin have been doing. A lot of teams are doing it. They all bunched in the middle into a spine, and they left massive space down the flanks for an easy kick pass. Nothing came of it, but it was asking the Kerry defence questions. For the next one, they pulled everyone really high, really wide, and left massive space down the middle. Again, it was asking the Kerry defenders different questions. And I think that's like, you can't underestimate, again, from like, I haven't been in any kind of All-Ireland semi-finals, but when games are tense and tight going down the stretch, to be able to have that composure to go back to your coach and go back to your training. And I think this was probably Kerry's overall problem. They were reacting to what Armagh were doing all day, as far as I could see, for most of it. Whereas I think Kerry's progression needs to be, they have their way of playing and are not reacting consistently to what other teams are doing. Like, I mean, from a Kerry, if I was a Kerry supporter, I don't want to see David Clifford back on my own 45 religiously. I just don't. I personally, I'd be telling David Clifford, you cheat, stay up the field. And if they want to leave you one-on-one, happy days. If they want to bring everyone else down, we'll defend with 14, that's fine. But Kerry consistently got into positions I don't think they were comfortable with in that last 20 minutes. And look, they still got the extra time. I'm not saying there was a massive gulf between the teams, but I thought Armagh's coaching in that last 20 minutes was really, really good. And in fairness, yes, there was a couple of calls maybe Goff that made they were a little bit iffy, but I thought they were asking the questions. I didn't think Kerry were asking the questions in that last kind of, from about the 45th minute on. An extra time then I felt was just pure and utter conditioning. That's what I thought. Kerry looked absolutely gassed at full time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Ryan. I thought it's easy to sort of point the conditioning thing at a team whenever they've been beaten. Like, but Armagh have looked in a real serious. We've spoken about this before, lads, in the show. The importance of having continuity and consistency in S&C. Like, and Julie Davis been there for a long time. Like, they look like just physically primed, you know, in serious physical condition. And I thought their conditioning levels looked real extreme high level. Out of all the four teams over the weekend, I actually thought Armagh looked, Ryan, the fittest team in the four teams left.
Yeah, I would say they're probably the team that's been together the longest, Stephen. And as a result of that, they've been doing the strength and conditioning collectively for the longest period of time. Like, Kerry is still a young enough Kerry team. While I'm looking at Armagh, the big thing is McGeeney has kept, by and large, everybody on board since he's been appointed manager, 10 years ago. Like Steven Poacher, you know, all these boys have been around the block now. And when you're doing the things consistently and you're working with the same S&C and the same physio over a sustained period of time, you definitely will see positive results. And I think it was down to the conditioning, but I also would say it was down to their resilience. Like, Armagh had lost a few narrow games, and we've probably been a wee bit critical, saying they need to get better at getting over the line. And I just felt they had that bit of hunger. Add in the factor then of the support cheering them on and getting behind them. The way that they were probably 5 points down midway through the second half, and somehow they salvaged the draw. I just felt then, once that goes into extra time, the stuffing had been knocked out of Kerry a wee bit. And yes, I would say the condition was better from Armagh, but I think them other factors as well definitely played a part.
Yeah, and it's important to note as well too, last year was well documented, obviously, the role of Ethan Rafferty, who actually won the All-Ireland Bowls Championship last night. I seen Road Bowling Championship last night. I think it was a big shout of 1 down, 1 to go, big rally call. Like, but it's a game now I wouldn't be too au fait with, so I'm not going to detail in the Road Bowls, but fair play to Ethan. But obviously a bad leg break last year. He's got himself back in the reckoning. It was a door opening opportunity for Blaine Hughes, who had left the panel last year, whatever, and was back then. And like, Blaine Hughes has been absolutely exemplary the whole way through this competition. Like, his kickouts yesterday at times, like, I was standing behind the goals, like, and you know, just some of the kickouts were absolutely brilliant, very calm, very composed. And Blaine has come on massively as a goalkeeper. And again, lads, like, you know, the importance of just, you know, having a little bit of patience as a player and the sustainability, because he was absolutely brilliant, and he has been brilliant.
Yeah, I actually last year did a coaching with Carrick Cruppen, and he was up on the day I was in Sylvester's and was chatting away to him, and he wasn't in the Armagh panel at that stage, like, but you could see we're doing little bits and pieces, and you could see the quality he had, you know, was really evident. But what I like about Blaine is, like, a good quarterback. It looked like he was just basing what he was going to do based off what Kerry were doing. So if Kerry were coming in a wild high press, he was going to hit long towards the kind of the corner of the 65 and the sideline. If Kerry were dropping off and giving a number, he'd find that short. So he was consistently looking at the picture and alternating his kickouts accordingly. And I think that's a massive advantage, because let's say if you're our man, you're going out with, I have kickout plan A, and we're going to just keep hammering kickout plan A, and that's it. No matter whether teams drop off, whether teams push up, whether teams push 12 into our half, or whether they put 8 into our half. Like, I think a goalkeeper has to be, it's like you have to learn fast and forget faster, so they have to be thinking on the spot pretty much consistently. And especially in the last few minutes when things got tense, I think he hit a couple of go-to kickouts that were just, let's get it out that side of the field and let's scrap for breaks. And there's times, yes, there's times when short are on, absolutely, but there's also times when you have to have the game sense to see, right, where is this, probably where's our percentage kick out? Mightn't be the sexiest thing in the world sometimes, but it's getting to where you have numbers. And worst case scenario, if you lose it, you can get a bit of a cynical foul, or you can kind of get numbers around a break ball. So look, I thought he was really good, and he doesn't overplay the sweeper keeper element. He comes out when necessary. But I think all in all, just he brings a general sense of calmness, and I thought the variety in his kickouts was really impressive. That's all aligned to coaching as well. It's not just him on his own kind of figuring these things out, but obviously movement and stuff like that off the ball from players. But I think he brought a real general sense of calm to the whole kind of experience,
And I suppose from Armagh's perspective now, Ryan, it's 2 weeks of hype. It's 2 weeks of real momentum. The place will go mad. I've already had a number of messages from Armagh people already looking tickets already. I said, well, they're not printed yet, and I don't know where I'm going to get them. But they will be just fanatical now. They'll paint the place orange and white. It'll be a phenomenal couple of weeks in the lead up to this final. But from a Kerry perspective, Ryan, Paddy Tally's been there now, I think 3-4 years. I would say maybe, I think it's 3. Is it? It's 3. I think with Paddy, is it? And this would probably be the end of the road for Paddy. Will it be the end of the road for Jack O'Connor, do you think?
Yeah, well, I would. They won 1, didn't they? Has Jack been there a wee bit longer, or has he been 3 as well? But anyway, I don't know. The big thing we've always been saying is about Kerry, and this is a big if you were to stop David Clifford and Paddy Clifford and Sean O'Shea to a lesser extent,
yeah,
you have a good chance of beating Kerry. And in one way, you're saying to yourself, well, the coaches need to bring something else to the table, that if teams are able to deal with these boys, we're able to get scores, or we're able to win big games in other ways. And at the weekend, Armagh definitely done a job. Barry McCambridge was very good on David Clifford, obviously helped by his teammates. Joe McElroy ended up, I think, in the finish tagging Paddy Clifford, and Paddy maybe scored a crucial point near the end, but overall, Paddy Clifford's influence in the game was a lot less. And obviously Sean O'Shea, I thought, was a bit hit and miss. You seen him forcing a shot 40-45 yards out with the outside of his right boot. To me, that just seems like off the cuff stuff, and I wouldn't say Kerry looked as well coached as some of the other teams. And I do feel that maybe Jack O'Connor feels, he's got an All-Ireland, and that's really as much as he can get out of them, and it's maybe someone else's job to take over now. Will he get another year? Kerry they're very demanding down there. They expect to be reaching All-Ireland finals every year. Jacko has a great record, but there's 2 in a row now where he's lost out, so it'll be interesting to see. But look, Kerry always have quality players. I just feel maybe sometimes they're not as well coached as other teams. They rely on individual brilliance.
And maybe the man in waiting, Ledge, is the man that's in the Armagh camp, maybe, possibly Kieran Donaghy, maybe tailor-made for, although maybe possibly Kieran might be more interested in the coaching side of things than the managing, but obviously it was a tough day for him. You could see the emotion at the end of the game from him as well, having actually beaten his old county, but this experience in Armagh, obviously, people in Kerry would probably be talking about him, or the likes of Tomás O'Shea, guys like this,
Again, and you're right, it is very different. Coaching and management are 2 totally different gigs. And just as purely just from an outsider looking at Donny on the sideline for Armagh, he looks very involved, he looks very active, he's talking to the players, he looks like every bit the coach rather than the stand back manager, so again, that's just my opinion. But
Ledge, he's invested in it, and I think as a coach, obviously the forum that we have here, a lot of coaches are listening, and in Kieran's forum, and that's one thing as a coach. If you were going to give a coach advice, you need to be invested. If you don't invest emotionally into it, players pick up on bluffers. They know the boys that are there for a few pound, a quick buck or whatever, out the gap, and that's unfortunately, there's a lot of guys like that out there, and you sort of ask yourself the question sometimes, how emotionally invested are some people into the project or into the gig, and you can see how invested Donaghy is, you can really see how invested he is, and it's such an important part of it, lads, such an important part of it.
Yeah, and I don't think you can fake that either. The way he is, it looks quite genuine. It looks quite genuine, But as regards Kerry going forward, I agree with Ryan totally. I think they just look like a group of really talented footballers who don't have any connection, especially in their forward play, and missing a small bit of personality around that middle third, I think. They're like, look, they're not the footballers they have still get them really close. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're a million miles away, but I think they're definitely not maximizing the tools that they have. And I think that's the big thing, to find an identity that they're comfortable with and try their best not to be reacting consistently to what other teams are throwing at them. Like, it's no coincidence the one All-Ireland they won was probably that 2019 against Galway, where Galway kind of, I won't say go out and let them play, but Kerry kind of were able to kind of put their game plan on top of Galway rather than the other way around. And Galway were still kind of in their infancy with at that stage, you know. So look, I think Kerry still have to find a little bit of identity. I still don't know if they very clearly know what's their best way of playing. But as far as I'm concerned, yes, if you stop David Clifford, Sean O'Shea and Paddy Clifford, well, that's three of your forward line. I mean, you can't have three of your forward line going missing and that's it then. You know, there has to be another way. And in fairness, look, they did create the chances, don't get me wrong. And look, Thomas Sullivan on 2 occasions, you're probably banking on him kind of worst case scenario getting 2 scores out of those 2 chances he had, and nothing came of it. And I don't know. I'm still not sold on Kerry, and I don't think the fact of being in Munster helps them figure these things out as they go. Armagh kind of can figure things out on the go because they're getting exposed to different kind of structures and different kind of systems consistently. Kerry aren't.
Yeah. Well, no matter what happens, it's gonna be a really, really interesting 2 weeks in Armagh, and good luck to them. I wouldn't begrudge them winning it. Like, but moving on to Sunday's game, lads, Galway and Donegal. Obviously, you know, not much between the 2 teams in paper. When you sort of went into the game, you were expecting the game to be tight. You were expecting the game to be tense. Ultimately, it was the inefficiency in front of the goal, Ryan, from Donegal, particularly late in the game, that actually cost them the game. But you know, probably focusing on, we'll chat about Donegal in a second, but focusing on the winners for now. You know, Dylan McHugh was obviously awarded man of the match. A great game from half back. But for me, Ryan, like, you know, they have such an impressive forward line. Like, their full forward line, like Finnerty, Comer, and Walsh, you could perceivably argue that it's the best full forward line in Ireland on paper, you know. And I know sometimes Walsh does tend to flatter to deceive at different occasions, and you know, he plays in the periphery a lot. But what he does is he drags a lot of attention. And it does free up the likes of Finnerty or Comer, you know, to get a wee bit more ball. Like, but Rob Finnerty for me is extremely underrated. And maybe he's not, but I don't feel he gets the respect that maybe Walsh and Comer get. You speak to any sort of fan chatting to me about the game before, what do you think? And I'm saying, telling you now, Rob Finnerty's a handful, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, Comer and Walsh. It's just all about Comer and Walsh. Like, but I thought Finnerty yesterday was brilliant. And their half forward line as well. Serious physicality with McDade, with Maher, with Tierney. Like, it's a seriously impressive Galway team, right? Seriously impressive.
They have an unbelievable squad, Stephen. I think that's what we were talking about all year. We knew that they have the depth in the squad. It was just the big thing was the injuries. And we were saying, if Joyce can get all these boys back and have them, you know, match fit, then Galway are a phenomenal team. Now, the big concern was Shane Walsh up to match fitness, was Comer. And they probably weren't. Even Finnerty, I think, is carrying an injury. You're right about Finnerty. He's an excellent player. The thing is, he's playing an inside line with Comer and Shane Walsh, and probably that's why he doesn't get enough recognition. But Comer was quiet yesterday, but he's still a threat. There was a couple of long balls put in on top of him, and he'll battle it out any 50-50 ball at all. There may be one Patton knocked down, and eventually Walsh got clipping it over the bar. There was another one, I think, where Finnerty got in round the back and flicked it back out. And what I'm trying to say is, Comer will win any kind of ball, or at least make it a battle that's put into him. And it's hard to beat a full forward like that. And I think that was the one difference. Donegal were running the ball all the time. That was there, and it's worked for them. It's worked for them by and large. But I felt yesterday, at times, Galway could just put it in on top of Comer and make it a battle. Walsh didn't have his best game, but Caelan McColgan started for Donegal, and that the reason was probably to double up on Walsh. Owen Gallagher obviously went man to man, so Walsh didn't do the same scoring and the same, you know, power runs. He still occupied roughly 2 players. Now, they took McColgan off just before half-time because that plan wasn't really working, but I felt Donegal were a wee bit blunt. Like, Dara O'Boyle was sacrificed as a result of starting McColgan. Their defence, so for me, Stephen, they don't get enough credit. Like, Dylan McHugh got man of the match.
Sean McKern, big strong.
Sean McKern. We're looking at, you know, Silk. I thought Silk was very good in the front foot. Now, he missed 1 or 2, but I think he ended up with 2 points from play. I thought his interchanging with quick hands with Maher and Dylan McHugh was very effective. And the one thing probably from a Donegal point of view that I would have done was I would have kept Gallen inside, because I felt with Donegal defending, you're inviting Silk onto you, and he is very good in the front foot. If they would have left Gallen up top by himself, I think that would have kept Silk pushed back. And I also felt in open play, Gallen had the beating of Silk. So maybe that was one wee tweak. It wasn't in Donegal's nature the way they were playing all year, but I think that was the difference maybe in them and Armagh. If you look at the way Armagh played, they've got a bit of flair. They're not afraid to kick it. I'm even looking at that last score that Turbo got. Rian O'Neill looks up, 45-yard kick pass, bang, straight into space, let Turbo run onto it. You never really see Donegal playing like that.
Yeah.
And I thought Cian O'Neill, Porrick Joyce, I thought their setup was brilliant. Like McDean got back into that pocket on one side of the D. They had Mulcairn on the other side, and they really blocked up the two channels where Donegal have done massive damage in previous games.
Yeah, and Ledge McGuinness talked after the match about how the Galway had sort of spooked them a little bit by leaving 2 or 3 up at times, and he sort of said it had to readjust and that, like, but it just goes to show you as well too, like, just bringing a little niche to your play, bringing something different, expect the unexpected, and it just, the element of surprise is huge, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I think that's the thing about Galway for me, that is their USP probably. Like Armagh, yes, they will kick the ball, but they probably don't leave that traditional couple inside. They'll bring everyone back. Now I have to say Armagh will get numbers up the field really quickly, but Galway, by and large, Comer Finnerty nearly the majority of the time, maybe not so much in the second half, they revert a small bit of the type, but first half especially, they're always keeping a presence around the square. And look, all it's doing is keeping defenses honest, so like Comer's always going to take a defender and more than likely a +1. So that's taking 2 attackers. Like, this is what I was talking about Clifford earlier. Like, Clifford will take a defender and a sweeper all the time. That's 2 players that can't attack. I think I like that Galway have that option. And we're not talking about rooting, like ball in for 70 meters, but he's always a presence for those little inlet passes from the 45 in around to the top of the D. And he's consistently turning defenders around.
He's keeping them honest, Ledge. He's keeping them honest.
Absolutely. And I know as a defender, I don't want to be turning around and running to my own goal. I want to defend straight in front of me with all the play happening across the 45. I think Galway are really good at moving the point of contact. And if the kick pass isn't there, they will move it quite quickly. Second half especially, through the hands was really, really nice. Their angles are running. You could almost see it like as a drill. There was one score. Yeah. I'm not sure it was a John Maher score, but there was like an interplay of 3 or 4 crisscross hand passes, and it was almost like lads were standing on cones, getting ready to go. It was top class. I was genuinely so impressed with Galway in the second half. Equally, I was impressed with Donegal in the first half. I thought the score taking of both sides was some of the best scoring I've seen in an awful long time. Yeah. Like, Croke Park is not an easy place sometimes to score, especially going up into that hill section as we've discussed before. What I thought some of the scores were just like Langan from midfield from Donegal, 4 points in play. Some of them were outrageous. Like, I mean, Oisin Gallen's couple off the left in the first half. I thought the scoring was unbelievable. But because Donegal are so dependent on that running game, their efficiency has to be up there around 80-90% to win games, because it's practically we need to score every chance we get. Whereas in the second half, when those scores weren't going over, it was always giving Galway the in, because Galway have a couple of different ways of playing. They can hit you through the hands, but they can also hit you. They can hit you direct with a bit of ball as well. And look, the value, we've seen it like with Shane Ryan with the Armagh goal. We've seen it with Paul Murphy floating around there for the Kerry goal. We saw it with Comer hanging around as well for Galway. Like, the value of having a presence in that square is, it's really undervalued, because how many teams, like we're all coaching at different levels. How often do you ever coach your full back line to deal with long balls? However, how often would you actually just, like, everything is possession based, everything is kind of drill based, sweepers, all the rest of it. How often are any of our full back lines or any of our goalkeepers actually just dealing with some sort of an aerial ball, And it's a little bit, I don't want to sound too fucking old school about it, but like there is definite value. Like, look at the goal Tierney got, well, Paul Conroy got. I mean, that was just a shot that dropped short, but there was a presence in front of Patton, which ultimately led to the goal. So look, it was. I thought it was an absolutely cracking game. I really enjoyed it. Like, and
the standard was brilliant, Ledge. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
brilliant. And do you know what? Do you know what annoys me is that the Derry Kerry game is probably going to be the thing that's going to be used to beat football with for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of really good games as well. Like,
Yeah.
not every game is going to be brilliant. That was a fucking like that
And
was
Derry,
an
to be fair, have been involved. Like we were talking about Derry and Dublin in the National League final as one of the best games in a long time. And then a couple of months later, Derry are being pillified. Like, I think a large part of it is the narrative in the media. Like, and I think there's like, yourself, lads, there's no point in beating about the bush. Like the likes of Brawley and guys like this have a major impact and a major say. And when somebody throws a soundbite out there and then it becomes fucking hysterical. Like, and I know the Football Review Committee, I know they've been playing sort of challenge matches behind the scenes and stuff like that. We were asked to sort of be part of one ourselves, like, but it didn't suit. But it'd be interesting to see some of these new rules. I know that they're discussing a lot of things like the arc and stuff, but we did see scores yesterday from outside the arc. We did see scores, long range scores. Like in the game, I think when the best teams play each other, it's a great spectacle. When you get down through the levels and you get down to the Tailteann or whatever, and you see two teams at a low level playing against each other, it's a decent enough spectacle. It's not quality, but it's exciting. Like, it's close. Like, and I think that's the big issue. But just Ryan, just staying on the game for a second. Like, I probably haven't been this man's biggest fan, like Conor Gleeson, but I thought Conor Gleeson yesterday was brilliant. And I think it definitely helps. It really does help when you have the size across the middle. I know Donegal at times were sort of they were expecting a certain kick out. I watched it in the first half, and then McDaid just came from nowhere and picked one up in the pocket, and there was a great bit of flexibility, Ryan, in his kicking. And I thought even yesterday, particularly late in the second half, couple of times I was right behind one where it was like nearly like a radar stinger, and he just turned the body, opened it up, and just kicked it to the far side. I think it might have been a Tierney who picked up in the end of it. Like, but when you have that size across your half forward line, Ryan, it's some advantage too. But I thought Gleeson was great yesterday.
Yeah, he was excellent, Stephen. Like so much so that Donegal were going after Gleeson. That was their tactic in the first half, and at half time they had to say, "Hold on a wee second here, boys. We're going to have to completely change our game plan." They ended up dropping off. But yeah, the way he was able to find, as you said, just outside of the boot, 50-yard pingers straight into pockets of space. And sometimes, Stephen, he wasn't necessarily hitting targets, he was just hitting space. And it was like Galway players, they knew where it was going to. So I was very impressed with him. I thought even at the very end, when Donegal obviously needed to get the ball, get the hands on the ball to get another score or two, I thought he was very controlled. He took his time. He nearly knew exactly how long he could get away with, taking a couple of steps back and driving it long. So excellent performance because he's come under a lot of pressure. Now, in saying that, boys, we were talking about the Comer putting the ball on top of the square. There's still a lot to be said for that. Football, at times, letting it in. Like, if you look at it, the 3 goals that were scored over the weekend all came from high balls in or field shots. Like the Kerry goal was the same. It looked like it was going wide, it was flicked across the goal and palmed into the net. Obviously, the Armagh goal was something similar where what do you call him? The big midfielder Ben Creeley put Shane Ryan under pressure, and it was the same with the Galway goal, a field shot. So it's funny. Teams are that well organised now, and they're setting up and they're filling space that sometimes there's a lot to be said for just put it in there and compete for it and battle it out for the break ball. But look, it was a game of fine margins, Stephen. At the end of the day,
yeah,
that goal, it was lucky, and that was a massive score to get. Like, that was 3 points, obviously, in favour of Galway.
Yeah.
Then I'm thinking of at the very end, like Oisín Gallen was excellent, had a great year. That was bread and butter for him, really and truly, that free kick.
Yeah.
That would have put them one up. Instead, he misses it. Thompson slips, touches it on the ground, and Finnerty knocks it over the bar. Like, so, talk about momentum swings in such fine margins.
And like, let's be honest, lads, Ryan. Like, luck is huge too. Like, you need luck. You need that bit of luck. Like, you need that element of luck. And I suppose when any team sort of goes back and you look at the success, like even like you take the Euros last night, for example, like England in the final, like the luck that was hanging out of England the whole way through, they've qualified, like those knockout games and stuff. And you when you're in a tournament and you're in a competition like that, you do need a bit of luck, lads. And I suppose even when you look at the goal that Armagh got, there was an element of luck behind it. But then it's like anything, like it balances itself out when you think of all the bad breaks that Armagh have had. And I suppose Galway as well. I've had a couple of bad breaks. Go back to the All Ireland final a few years ago where, excuse me, the decision from Hurling, with the holding, and it was 16-all, the momentum was with Galway. Just a small wee thing, like, and it's small things make the big things happen, as Ryan says there now, and they're wee moments, like moments.
Yeah, and I'd really be slow to be overly critical of any team that was playing over the weekend. Like, I wouldn't say that any team had a massive flop or anything like that.
No.
Like, yeah, I'd probably a little bit on Kerry, but not. As you say, we're talking about one play right or wrong that was probably the difference in a lot of these games. You know, it is really fine margin, and that's probably what you want to see. You want your semi-finals to be that close. I mean, ultimately that's what it should be. Like quarterfinals probably weren't for the most part, but semi-finals really were. And look, just come back very briefly to Gleeson. I think Donegal missed a small trick with how they pressed him. Donegal went in the first half with a man-to-man press. For me, right, Gleeson's very good long. I would be teasing Gleeson into the short. I'd almost be giving him an extra man somewhere inside his 45 that makes him think, oh, we've a number here. I should be going for it. And almost going with a little bit more of a zone, a little bit more of an active zone, ignoring the men per se. Like, think of that goal that Armagh against where Conor Turber turned around and picked off. He was playing his zone and picked off that short one. I think Donegal went man to man, and that just it clarified in Gleeson's head, okay, this has to be long. I'd have been teasing Gleeson into short. I don't think he's comfortable. I don't think he's comfortable with short at all. And Donegal actually just cut off the short, which made it very clear what he had to do. Now, in saying that, I said this the last day, when Sean Kelly wasn't starting, obviously a massive leader for Galway, but you're bringing in Cian Darcy, who is, as we said, 6'5". He's a massive presence around the midfield. Like, the way I look at Galway at the moment is like, you know, again, we go to a little bit a golf analogy for a second. Gleeson is hitting a drive down a fairway that has no trees, no water, no out of bounds, nothing but fairway across the board, because he's got 4 monsters standing there.
That would suit you. That would suit you.
Absolutely, this is my game, like, you know.
And then you throw in 2 easier a conifer threes, and your fucking head goes like.
Absolutely, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, you go on trying to have to play. You got out of bounds right. You've got a little bit of water left, and you're having to put a little low 2-iron stinger. All of a sudden, that asks you totally different questions. Whereas I felt yesterday, Gleeson, as Ryan alluded to, was able to just hit spaces, and he had a fair idea that they were going to worst case scenario get a break ball. I think Donegal played into the hands of small, but then obviously conceding it at half time was happy days for Galway, you know.
Yeah, I know. And you know what though? Like, Cian Darcy, just on that, lads. Cian Darcy, he's playing his football in Dublin, isn't he? Ballyboden, is it?
He's Ballyboden. We're playing him in championship in a couple of weeks, so he's
right.
Might be giving up a few short to him as well.
So the Dublin Championship, will the Dublin Championship go ahead even though those boys are still involved with the county?
We're August 10th is our first game, so it'll be all said and done.
It'll be all done. Yeah, it'll be all done. Like, it'll be all done.
Hopefully he goes on a 3-week holiday.
Ryan, Donegal's perspective, you know, obviously, you know, a disappointing day from an efficiency point of view. I think Jim talked about it. Like, but I would say, Ryan, all in all, I know McGuinness is a big believer in, you know, in he probably felt he could have won in All Ireland, particularly when Dublin were knocked out, particularly when he probably watched Saturday and he seen Kerry were gone, and he probably wouldn't have feared Kerry anyway. But he will be deep down, Ryan, he'll be thinking, this is an All Ireland that got away, you know, in his first year, and he could have won an Ulster title and All Ireland title, and you know the legacy is just, you know, it's in gold then for forever, isn't it? Like,
look, Stephen, if you're at the start of the year, you know, promotion, win the Ulster Championship, like the manner that they did, the teams that they took out of it, top their group after losing to Cork, get to an All-Ireland semi-final, you know, you'd be saying that'd be an unbelievable year for Donegal.
Ryan, there's a lot of parallels with his first year in 2010 or 2011, you know, when they won Ulster, you know, they had a good league and they were beaten narrowly in a semi-final, so, you know. Yeah,
there definitely is. Now, I think in his first year, he was very rigid. Obviously, they were super defensive and it was about trying to take away the opposition's strengths. And then year 2, then they were able to develop their game so much more. I'm just not too sure. Like, as you said there, he'll be looking at that thinking, Jesus, Dublin were gone, Kerry were gone. Like, this was the opportunity. And he wouldn't have feared Armagh in the final. And look, Stephen, they weren't far away. They definitely weren't, and a lot of things worked for them. And in that first half, like, I felt Donegal looked like the better team. You know, the goal kept Galway into it, you know, in a large way. Their shooting accuracy was unbelievable, but it's very hard to sustain that. And the big thing for me is Donegal are very good once they get on the top of the D, reverse passes, you know, looping, coming off the ball carrier. And you have to give credit the way Galway closed down that space. They literally played with like 2 double sweepers either side of the D. Killian McDaid, the whole second half, I was under the Hogan, and he just was constantly running back into that channel, which meant then the scorers, the likes of Ryan McHugh, the Patter Mogans, these boys weren't able to come in and find pockets of space and kick scores. So look, he maybe will have to develop a few more attacking players, Stephen. I felt their bench didn't have the same impact as the likes of Galway's or even Armagh that we were talking about. So if McGuinness can develop his squad, it's a long road back, but I have no doubt, the players will back his ability and he'll back himself. That they belong at that level now.
And a bit of emotion yesterday, obviously, too, Ledge, from a Galway perspective. Obviously, the death of John O'Mahony during the week, and I love Padraig Joyce's words, after the game, where he just sort of talked about. He says he got a great send off on Thursday, and he says like he was like a father figure to him, and Joyce obviously looked back one of the best forwards that played the game, Padraig, and he talked about what John done for him on a personal level, and it shows you the importance of having a manager and a coach that shows empathy to players as well, and the V-shaped formation before the game, I actually wasn't too sure what it had meant, but it was obviously a symbolization of him as being a leader of change, or whatever, avant-garde leader of change, and he was a legendary figure, and I think one of the greatest documentaries, Ledge, I don't know if you've seen it, like A Year Till Sunday, it's so watchable, isn't it? Like it's just brilliant, like it's just brilliant.
It's top class, like it's everything pure about the kind of almost still the amateurness of the GAA,
and that was
it was
proper knockout then. That was knockout.
Yeah.
It was training for 10 weeks, 12 weeks for one game, and you could have been gone, like.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like you could almost, like when you're watching it, you can almost smell the DP coming through the TV and the newspaper and the Puma Kings, But John would have been in with us in 2015 for a couple of months.
Right,
like Jesus, talk about a different personality when you come in then after him, two polar opposites. Like John's a real gentleman, but he really went in the short period of time we had. He was a lovely fella, and I thought it was very powerful before the game. I really did. And they put the tribute on the screen. And I was just thinking, as a Galway player, Jesus, you'd be hopping out of your skin, because there is kind of, I don't know, that 98, 2000 team with Galway, there's a kind of a cult around them lads. And that era of football in general, I think, maybe it's the age we are, I don't know, but that always seemed like, let's say, call it the golden era, even though the football might have been fantastic, but there was something kind of pure about it, where it had the mix. It was starting to get a little bit more professional, but it was still kind of proper amateur, and obviously the Pat Comer doing the documentary was the real kind of it summed that up, because you wouldn't get that access ever again. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
but,
no, I was actually down in Galway. I was down in Galway a few years ago, actually doing a coach edge thing with a club down there, and I met Sean O'Depore, and he was telling me that they took 98 hours of footage for that. So there was 98 hours footage, and he says some of the footage you couldn't have shown again, footage coming home in the car of boys fucking slating boys and boys giving that. But he actually said an interesting thing to me. He says, as a group, they weren't particularly close after that. The way groups sort of get together and they go away and the reunion stuff. He says they never really. I don't know what it was. He said the likes of the Armagh squad, the down 94 is a great example. They're a very close group, and they would do a lot of reunions and they go golfing and stuff. But he says there's a handful of them sort of stay together. So it's a mad one, that, So it's just it's an interesting one. But lads, I suppose the final itself, Ryan, we'll chat about it next week. But what's your first thinking? Like, if you were gonna call it now, what would you be thinking? Like, has to be a penalty shootout, doesn't it? It has to be.
Look, I think, Stephen, it genuinely is a 50-50 game. They've played each other already in the championship, and it was a draw, wasn't it? They played each other, was it last year or the year before, and that went to penalties. And by and large, it's more or less the same players.
Yeah.
I suppose Armagh will have unbelievable confidence. They've got that monkey off their back as such of winning a really close game. So I think they'll be bouncing going into it. Galway, I feel there's another gear in them. They won a game yesterday without Comer flying, without Walsh flying. Sean Kelly will probably have to come back into the mix. So I think Joyce will be happy with where they're at as well. If you ask me to call it, I'll go for Armagh. I'll back the Ulster County.
Yeah, Ledge.
You're
an anti-Nordy. You're an anti-Nordy. You'll go for Galway, will you?
I have to have some balance in this podcast. It's a disgrace. Like, there's never any Southerners last on. Well, Turlough was the last one on. But anyway, I just very, very quickly, I think we're going to get the All-Ireland final, one of the best All-Ireland finals for a long time. I really do. I think both of these teams are set up to provide a cracker. I really do. Yes, they'll both defend and all the rest of it, but I think we're set up for a phenomenal All-Ireland final. I just think in the next 2 weeks, there's a couple of aspects. I think for Galway, firstly, getting everything cleared up. I think injuries are going to, there's no doubt Comer's on one leg. That's a fact. As you said, even Finnerty's carrying knock. Walsh is not himself. I think Galway clearing up those few bits, getting Sean Kelly back, that's going to be critical. Galway have been here before as well, which I think is huge. look, I'm not a massive sports psychologist. We've all been there where you get a sports psychologist coming in for one session every 3 months, and all of a sudden you're meant to have this mindset. I'm sure both of these teams have full-time sports psychs working with them on a weekly basis. I think the value now in both of these teams assimilating what's happened and getting themselves grounded again and kind of processing this in a really clear way is going to be huge, because I don't think either team, yes, in the big wide goal, the hopeful goal, they would have said All-Ireland final. I don't think either of them would have probably said, yeah, we're 100% going to be in an All-Ireland final, and all of the hype that's going to go around with both counties. I think whichever team deals with this next 2 weeks could be crucial, because, to be honest, as Ryan said, I don't think there's much separating these in a football sense. I think they're, like we've seen already, they've provided a few epics previously, and I don't see this being any different. So I think the difference maker could be, yes, Galway's injuries firstly, but I think how both teams psychologically deal with the next 2 weeks and the occasion itself, I think is going to be huge.
Well, looking at the support that was in Croke Park yesterday from Galway and Saturday from Armagh, there is going to be some scramble for tickets, I'll tell you. Because obviously, unfortunately, for All-Ireland final day, you have all sorts of dignitaries who never go to a fucking game getting tickets, like so. But no, listen, it'll be interesting. I suppose we can't go without mentioning the big win on Saturday, the Tailteann Cup. I'm just looking at a couple of messages I've got here where I think we got an honourable mention there, I think, on social media from a few people. The Down Waterman, Morgan there, he's given us plenty, the locker room there, and Pat had a wee cut the mustard one. But look, you know what? I was critical earlier in the year, obviously, a couple of things. Like I still think there's 3 or 4 tiers in football. Like, Down won that Tailteann Cup without taking anything away from them. They beat Limerick, they beat Sligo, they beat London, they beat Laois, and hard to get excited. It's hard to get excited. I think even at the end of the game, there's muted celebrations. There was actually a very poor down crowd there on Saturday. There was a very poor down crowd. And I think if you were playing, lads, this is my opinion, like, I think there is a tier 3 in football. Probably, it was probably tier 4, actually. But I think if you're playing a tier 2 and you have the likes of, your Cavans, your Clares, those sort of counties in it, lads, I think it sort of carries a bit more. It probably carries a bit more credibility, for me, and that would be my take on it. I think was there calls at the weekend for a tier 3 competition? Was there calls at the weekend for a tier 3? But look, at the end of the day, it's irrelevant anyway, because I think the most important thing for Down, obviously, Ryan, is to get Sam Maguire football next year. They obviously are very vocal about testing themselves at a higher level, and they have a great opportunity now next year to do that. Like, I do feel from watching the game on Saturday, I think that physically, and it's unfortunate we don't have too many big men. I do think they're a wee bit off that level, of competing at the top table. But I'm certainly maybe in a one-off game or something, they could give one of the big guns a decent clip, But Saturday's game, Ryan, it was a poor standard, boy.
To be honest with you, Stephen, we've always been expecting big things from Down. I look at their players. I look at obviously Kilcoo that won the All Ireland there not too long ago. I look at their pace and their power, and I think we're just calling it as we see it. Down have got to Croke Park a number of times. They lost to Meath last year in the Tailteann Cup final. When I remember going down to that game, getting excited. I felt Down pace and power could rip Meath apart. Yeah. Meath obviously changed the way that they normally play. O'Rourke, took a step back and says, okay, maybe we need to set up differently. I'm thinking of the Division 3 league final where I was saying, get to Croke Park, Down could rip Westmeath apart, and they lost that game. And then even the Tailteann Cup semi-final, Sligo had a brilliant season under McEntee, but I thought, Jesus, the worst place for them to play Down is Croke Park. And probably being straight up, Sligo could have won that game if they didn't go down to 14 men. Yeah. So coming into the final, I thought, no, I'm not even really that interested as a neutral watching this game, because I thought Laois have had a great year, but they wouldn't have the legs to compete with Down. And again, Down, they struggle. Like, if you're a Down supporter, you'd be saying, Jesus, it wasn't free flowing. It didn't look like, we were running away with it. And I think that's where Down players probably say themselves, they want to be in the top tier. They feel like they deserve to be playing All Ireland football. And that's fair enough, but I think they still need to go another few levels before they're able to compete with those teams. On the flip side, and this is crazy, Down lost to Armagh by a last kick of the game. We talk about Armagh working on a set play. Yeah. Armagh, we talked about this in the podcast at the time, where Armagh worked the perfect score and beat Down by a point. So Down, probably players and management and all feel on their day they can compete
on the basis of that performance, probably thinking, we're not that far away. Like, yeah.
And now we're looking at Armagh in an All Ireland final after beating Kerry in a magnificent game, and we're looking at Down probably struggling to get over the line against Laois. So maybe it's a case of Down just need to get a bit more consistent into their play if they want to move on and push on to the next level. Because definitely the game on Saturday now, the Tailteann Cup Final, it wasn't the most exciting, you know.
No, it's poor stuff. Like, Ledge.
Yeah, look, to be fair, like I think me and Ryan have always been really positive about Down. I think most of the negativity was coming from your end, so I don't know who has been getting on.
All I said was that it was red and black, they're not white socks. Ryan, you were sort of saying as well too. There's a lot of different variations in socks. That's the whole thing.
What do you call them? Fades and blades or something. Was it? What do you call them?
Oh God! I'll tell you what. If they're worried about that, there's nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, no. Look, to be honest, right? I think a big thing there is just for Down to actually win a game in Croke Park. I think that was probably important. Yeah. I think they should be counting their lucky stars. They were playing in Division 4. Well, Laois to be Division 3 next year, but I think Laois didn't have the conditioning to stay with them, and ultimately that's what it came down to, conditioning. It wasn't. I don't think it was a whole lot of extra football. Like, I mean, Laois, I think it was 11 scores that said on the TV that Down got from Laois turnovers. Like, I mean, that just shows you the gulf in class, which would indicate there is a couple of tiers. But look, doesn't matter. It's a win for Down, which is where they think they should be. I wouldn't be rubbing themselves in the back for too long. I think now the journey is only starting for them. You know, I think next year it really has to.
I think from a continuity point of view, like you talk about Armagh, you know, McKeever's been there in a long time. Donegal's been there 4 years. He said, you know, they brought Gilligan in as a freshness this year. Down lost McGuinness last year, you know, and brought in Kieran Mina. The likelihood of Kieran Mina staying, who knows? You know, there's a lot of jobs coming up at the minute. There's a lot of talk in the background of where he'll be, where he'll go. You know, if he stays, brilliant, because there's that wee bit of consistency. But if he was the goal edge, you know what I mean, Ryan, and then you bring in another man, and you know, it's
Stephen, I just think that'll be an interesting one. If Mina stays with Down, he will trust the process and he will feel they're going the right direction. If Mina steps away and goes to Derry, then you would ask the question, maybe did Mina have enough belief in where this Down team are going? You know, so that'll be an interesting one to see.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of
Stevie. Just give him one positive here, because I know we're getting a bit of heat. But in fairness to them, for the last couple of years, they have taken the Tailteann Cup seriously, and they have used it as a springboard. Yes, they mightn't have been fantastic in all those games, but they've probably taken it more seriously than any team.
100%. No, 100%.
You know,
a lot of counties have literally just, you know, I think a lot of counties put down tools when it came to the Tailteann. A lot of players went away and stuff like that as well. And I suppose a lot of counties, even the likes of Kildare there, you know, it's you know, they should be looking at themselves thinking, like, you know, if they'd got their shit together at all, like, they probably would have won it, like, you know, and that's the reality of it, you know. But listen, lads, look, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to catch up again. Great weekends of football. The two semi-finals were unbelievable. Football is back. You know, Armagh are back. The good days are back. It's like coming into the boom again with the Celtic Tiger and that, like, you know. So hey, listen, look, there'll be a scramble for tickets, and I wish all the Armagh fans all the very best. But please do not be taxing me. I do not have any. So here, listen, I'll see you next week, lads. Take care.
Cheers, boys.
Good luck, boys.
Good luck.